Hi everyone, this is just a little video for the subscribers to the Infinite Openings. I've noticed that there's been a bit of a slowing down of the object, so I've made some changes to speed it back up. So as you know, we have options for internal, remote, loaded libraries. So the remote and the loaded libraries are the XML files. Loaded is just obviously in the file, in the loaded library folder. And the remote is somewhere stored on your server or somewhere else in the cloud. The internal we put in there so that we could actually speed things up, so that it didn't have to keep communicating with these XML files, that it could communicate with it with a macro and grab the data from that. Now, however, because we have so many components, there's actually I think now 27 components, so that's 27 separate data connections. And then when that data comes through, it gets sorted into alphanumerical order. So running those scripts all the time is slowing it down, and it runs in the parameter script. So basically, I think the parameter script is run maybe 3 times when you refresh an object. So those actions of it alphanumerically sorting and connecting to the data is running 3 times when you just do a simple move. So I'm going to stay now. So this is obviously the case also with the internal, just because there's so much of it. So if I show that, I'll demonstrate how slow it is. So I've got it here. I've got the all set to internal, so that's the fastest option. And up in my model view options, I actually have the data connected at this point, because now I've set the internal to rely on this as well, because there's another disconnected method that I've established. So all data connected to the internal macro, which is storing the latest data. Click OK. This is just a simple window, sliding window, and you'll notice if I try and change the opening, it's pretty slow. Like it's just not keeping up. Painful, tedious. I don't know why someone didn't mention this to me earlier, because I don't really notice all these things straight away. But if you've noticed these sorts of things, it's slowing down, then please tell me. Okay, so another example of that, I'll just open up this elevation, and this is where it's really troublesome, is when we're doing a polygon frame. So I've been messing around with this at the moment, so let me just go into the settings. So I open up the settings, see it thinks a little bit for that. I'm just going to go back to the shape. I'm going to set that to standard, so it's back to rectangular, and now I'm going to switch it back to polygon again. Okay, now if I want to adjust things, so I want to add some nodes, click on this node, thinking, come on, still going. This is all real time that you're seeing this in. Not that that's a compliment, but just so you're aware. So you can see that is painful. If you've got to wait for this to configure an odd shaped window, that's just unacceptable. So what I've done is I have enabled the element to store the latest data you used internally in the instance, and therefore it becomes instantaneous. So if we go back up here and we now disconnect this data, so that's also disconnecting from the internal macro. Click OK. Grab this again, and now you can see we can move it around at a much more acceptable speed. It's not completely keeping up. Like you can see, there's a little bit of a delay, but it's insignificant. So now with that, I'll just go back to the 2D as well. Same with opening this. Once again, no delay at all. And that's the same with if you're defining a frame profile. Let me just demonstrate that. So let's go to our frame profile. We'll set that to polygon. Make sure our polygon hotspots are on. Yes. Click OK. And now we can very quickly adjust that frame profile. Now the way I've achieved this is if we go into the object and go down to all parameters. I should probably hide these because you people should not be messing with the object in these parameters. That's too messy and convoluted. So here we have our internal catalog. Now this is an array that is storing the internal data, and it's storing the internal data for all the components. But this is the last bit of internal data, or the last bit of data. I'm saying internal because it's internal in this situation. This is the last bit of data that you applied to it. So whether that was from the internal macro or from one of the XML files, this is that data set. Okay, so it stays now locally within there. So even though you're disconnected from the data still remains within the object, within the individual instance of that object. So let's have a look. I'll just sort of prove that to you. So just going to go in here, back to component catalogs. I've also added this refresh data button. So just say you want to just get the latest bit of data for this one. You want to keep the data disconnected because you want the speed of manipulating and designing the different shapes. But you do want to refresh it for this instance because you know someone's updated a profile in the database. So let's just use the overall shapes. So the data is disconnected, so it's internal. So this is our internal list that we have here. So I can set all these. So I can just set that back to the sliding 01 frame, or I can set it to the flying pig, and so on. I'm going to go back to that sliding 01. So the data is all still working, and it's working very fast. Now, if I change this to a different database, so say I go to my local database, which for this example actually does have a different set of data in it to the internal, you can see I'm still just getting my internal database list. All right, but if I hit a refresh, to a second, and now I've got a new list, and this is the list that came from this database. So you can update the data instantaneously within the object to make sure you're working with the latest while keeping the whole project disconnected from the data so that everything is nice and fast. Now that raises the concern that perhaps at some point some objects will have up-to-date data and some objects won't. All you do in that instance is you click OK. You go back and you turn your data back on, and then you go to your library developer menu and you click run parameter script on all placed parts. Now what that will do is that will run that parameter script that updates the data within each object, and it takes a few seconds to do that depending on the number of elements that you've got placed, and then you'll know that all your elements are using the most latest data and they're completely up to date. Okay, that's that little refresh done. I hope you all appreciate having such a powerful and complex tool now work as fast as one of the basic tools, and I hope it makes your life a lot easier. Ta.